Chapter 5. The Institutes. The Tavistock Institute. According to the Educate Yourself website, Tavistock is the best kept secret in America. They commend Dr. John Coleman for bringing the information to light about its history and true purpose, after exposing it in his 1992 book. In a preface from John Quinn, Newshawk, he says that he was sent an article by Dr. Byron Weeks which looks at this globally active British institute that has had its hands in just about every social and political governmental movement of note throughout much of the world for the past 50 years. He cites who is behind the CIA, saying that they don't swear allegiance to America as allegiance is with the British royal family. It is based in Tabernacle Street in London but was formed in 1947. It is an independent not-for-profit organization which combines research in social science with professional practice. Problems such as institution building and organizational design and change are tackled in all sectors such as government, industry and commerce, health and welfare, education, etc. This is nationally and internationally, and clients ranged from multinationals to small community groups. A growth area was in the use of a developmental approach to evaluation of new and experimental programs in health, education and community development. Three elements make the institute unusual. It is independent because it is self-financing. Its research places it between academia and consultancy, and its range of disciplines include anthropology, economics, organizational behavior, political science, psychoanalysis, psychology and sociology. The ideology of American foundations was created by the Institute in London. In 1921, the Duke of Bedford gave a building to the Institute in order to study the effect of shell shock on British soldiers after World War I. The purpose was to establish the breaking point of men under stress, under the direction of the British Army Bureau of Psychological Warfare, commanded by Sir John Rawlings Rees. The prophet of the Institute was Sigmund Freud. The Institute's pioneering work in behavioral science along Freudian lines of controlling humans established it as a world center of foundation ideology. Its network extends from the University of Sussex to the United States through the Stanford Research Institute, Asylum, MIT, Hudson Institute, Heritage Foundation, Center of Strategic and International Studies at Georgetown, where State Department personnel are trained, U.S. Air Force Intelligence and the Rand and MITA corporations. Personnel of these corporations are required to undergo indoctrination at one or more of these Tavistock-controlled institutions. A network of secret groups, the Mont Pelerin Society, Trilateral Commission, Ditchley Foundation and the Club of Roma Conduits for instructions to the Tavistock network. The Institute developed mass brainwashing techniques which were used experimentally on American prisoners of war in Korea. Its experiments in crowd control methods have been used widely on the American public. A refugee with German origins named Kurt Lewin became the Institute's director in 1932 and went to the United States in 1933 as a refugee. He was the first of many infiltrators and set up the Harvard Psychology Clinic, which originated the propaganda campaign to turn the American general public against Germany and involve the United States in World War II. In 1938, Roosevelt executed a secret agreement with Churchill which ceded United States sovereignty to England because it agreed to let Special Operations Executive control the United States policies. To implement this, Roosevelt sent General Donovan to London for indoctrination before setting up OSS, now the CIA, under the aegis of SOSIS. The entire OSS program as well as the CIA has always worked on guidelines set up by the Tavistock Institute. The Tavistock Institute originated the mass civilian bombing raids carried out by Roosevelt and Churchill as a clinical experiment in mass terror, keeping records of results as they watched the guinea pigs reacting under controlled laboratory conditions. All Tavistock and American Foundation techniques have a single goal: to break down the psychological strength of the individual and render him helpless to oppose the dictators of the world order. Any technique which helps to break down the family unit and family-inculcated principles of religion, honor, patriotism and sexual behavior is used by the Tavistock scientists as weapons of crowd control. The Institute has developed such power in the United States that nobody achieves prominence in any field unless he has been trained in behavioral science at Tavistock or one of its subsidiaries. Henry Kissinger, whose rise to power was inexplicable, was a German refugee and student of Sir John Rawlings Rees at Schaff. Dr. Peter Bourne, a Tavistock Institute psychologist, picked Jimmy Carter for President of the United States because Carter had undergone a brainwashing program administered by Admiral Hyman Rickover at Annapolis. Through the Stanford Research Institute, Tavistock controls the National Education Association, the Institute of Social Research at the National Training Lab brainwashes the leading executives of business and government. Such is the power of the Tavistock Institute that the United States space program was scrapped for 9 years in order for the Soviets to catch up. This was demanded by Dr. Anatol Rapport and it was granted by the government, which in turn mystified NASA. Another institute operation is the Wharton School of Finance at the University of Pennsylvania. Another institute strategy is the use of drugs. An example is the infamous MK-Ultra program of the CIA, in which unsuspecting CIA officials were given LSD to study their reactions. This resulted in deaths where the United States government had to pay damages to the victims' families. A Swiss drug company named Sandoz AG was owned by a London company named S.G. Warburg Co. and they developed LSD. Roosevelt's advisor, James Paul Warburg, the son of Paul Warburg that wrote the Federal Reserve Act and nephew of Max Warburg who financed one Adolf Hitler, set up the Institute for Policy Studies to promote LSD. The result was the LSD counterculture of the 60s and the student revolution that was financed by the CIA to the tune of $25 million. In the 1950s, the CIA funded LSD experiments in Canada. Dr. D. Ewan Cameron, president of the Canadian Psychological Association and director of the Royal Victorian Hospital in Montreal, received payments from the CIA to give 53 patients large doses of LSD in order to record their reactions. Patients were drugged into weeks of sleep and then given electric shock treatments. This is the legacy of the Warburgs and the CIA. Their principal agency, the Institute for Policy Studies, was funded by James Paul Warburg and its co-founder was Marcus Raskin, protégé of McGeorge Bundy, president of the Ford Foundation. Bundy had Raskin appointed to the post of President Kennedy's personal representative on the National Security Council and in 1963, funded the Students for Democratic Society, through which the CIA operated the drug culture. Nowadays, the Tavistock Institute operates a $6 billion a year network of foundations in the United States, all funded by United States taxpayer money. 10 major institutions are under its control. There are 400 subsidiaries. There are 3,000 study groups and think tanks which originate programs to increase the control of the New World Order over the citizens of the United States. The Stanford Research Institute, which adjoins the Hoover Institution, is a $150 million a year operation with 3,300 employees. It carries out program surveillance for 400 companies including Bechtel and Kaiser, as well as intelligence operation for the CIA. One of the key agencies is the Ditchley Foundation that was founded in 1957 and is run in the United States by Cyrus Vance, a former Secretary of State and Director of the Rockefeller Foundation. It is also run by Winston Lord, President of the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, who has also been a part of the Bilderberg Group and is a Skull and Bones member. His wife Betty Bayo Lord is also a CFR and Bilderberg Group member. One of the Rockefeller Foundation operations has been to initiate techniques to control the world of agriculture. Its director Kenneth Wernemund set up the Rockefeller-controlled programs in agriculture throughout Mexico and Latin America. The independent farmer is a great threat to the world order, because he produces for himself and because his produce can be converted into capital, which gives him independence. In Russia, the Bolsheviks tried to control the people but were dismayed to find their plans threatened by the independence of the smaller farmers named the kulaks. Stalin ordered the OGPU to seize the food and animals of the kulaks and to try to starve them out. In 1935, the Chicago American carried the headline on its newspaper, 6 million perish in Soviet famine, peasants' crops seized, they and their animals starve. The Communist Party, the party of the peasants and workers, exterminated the peasants and enslaved the workers. Many totalitarian regimes, it seems, have found the small independent farmer to be their biggest and most stubborn stumbling blocks. In the United States, the foundations are presently engaged in the same type of war against the American farmer. Once a citizen becomes aware of the true roles of the foundations, they can understand the high interest rates, high taxes, destruction of the family unit, degradation of the churches into forums of revolution, subversion of universities into CIA cesspools of drug addiction, and the halls of government into sewers of international espionage and intrigue. An American citizen can now finally understand why the agents of the federal government are against them, and it's because the alphabet agencies, the FBI, IRS, CIA and BATF make war on citizens in order to carry out the programs of the foundations. Tavistock institutions in the U.S. include Flow Laboratories, Merle Thomas Corporation, Walden Research, Planning Research Corporation, Brookings Institution, Hudson Institute, National Training Laboratories, University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School of Finance and Commerce, Institute for the Future, Institute for Policy Studies, Stanford Research Institute, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, Rand Research and Development Corporation. RAND is the think tank most beholden to the Tavistock Institute and the RIA's most prestigious vehicle for control of United States policies at every level. RAND policies that became operative include the ICBM program, Prime Analyses for U.S. Foreign Policy Making, Instigator of Space Programs, U.S. Nuclear Policies, Corporate Analyses, Projects for the Military and the CIA in relation to the use of mind-altering drugs like peyote and LSD through MKUltra. Some of their clients have included AT&T, Chase Manhattan Bank, IBM, National Science Foundation, Republican Party, TRW, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Department of Health, U.S. Department of Energy. John Coleman, author and former MI6 agent, wrote a book on the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. He said in it that in modern America a closely knit group of social psychologists, pollsters and media manipulators is presided over by an elite group of powerful patrons, known as the Committee of 300 or, more significantly, the Gods of Olympus.